Right. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock on 3rd of September. Welcome to the executive meeting tonight. Um, so we'll start item one. Apologies for absence. Have we got any apologies?
Yeah, we have an apology for absence from Councillor Hopewell.
Thank you, Councillor Sarah. Okay. Yep, Councillor Sarah Hopewell. Item two, leaders' announcements. So obviously, welcome back. It's September. We've had summer. And summer has gone, and it's another cycle. I hope you've all had at least a short break, and are ready and rested. So, just as usual, a reminder to everyone present that this meeting is being webcast. Please speak into your microphone if you want to ask questions or have comments. Item three is the minutes of the 9th of July 2024, which is on pages 5 to 16 of the agenda pack. Are there any comments or questions or corrections that need to be made? No? Okay, great. So we have the minutes from the committee meeting held on the 9th of July. Are members content for me as leader to sign the minutes? Okay.
Yes, Leader, I so propose that we accept the minutes.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Oh, thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks. So, can we have a vote, please? Anyone in favour of these minutes? Thank you very much. That's everyone. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's everyone. Thank you. Item 4 on the minutes, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest tonight? No. Thank you very much. Right, we were going to go to item 5, but I've been asked to bring forward item 7 first. So we were going to start with item 7 quickly to move in, sneak in. So this is the East Herts complaints process and changes to LGSCO Code of Practice, which is on pages 37 to 67 of the agenda pack. And it will be over to Councillor Joe Dumont to introduce.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this item forward in the agenda as well. So today this piece updates members on the complaints handling process for the year 23-24, and it's a briefing on recent changes introduced by the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, LGSCO, with the launch of their new complaints handling code. So as we'll know, complaints are a valuable tool for feedback, helping us to identify areas for improvement in our services. Over the period, we recorded 159 complaints at stage 1, with only 26 of these escalating to stage 2, which reflects our ongoing commitment to addressing issues and complaints at their earliest opportunity. The main themes from our complaint outcomes highlight issues of communication errors, and lack of supporting evidence, particularly in cases that involve telephone interactions. While some complaints were fully upheld, indicating some service failures, others were partially upheld due to ambiguities or perceived issues with tone and response timeliness. Key learnings here include the need for better communication, more accurate record keeping, and implementing a call recording system to avoid similar issues in the future. The Ombudsman's decisions on our complaints show that in several cases there was no fault found with our actions, particularly in handling planning applications and enforcement and building control. Most complaints were dismissed by the Ombudsman due to insufficient evidence of fault or significant injustice caused to the complainants. These findings suggest that while residents have had concerns, this council generally acted within its policies and within its procedures. The LGSCO's complaint handling code was launched earlier in this year in February, and it's designed to bring about greater consistency, efficiency, and fairness in complaint handling across all local authorities. The code has encouraged us to adopt a more structured approach focusing on timely, fair responses and the use of complaint data to drive service improvements. Importantly, the code aligns with standards set by other public sector ombudsmen, such as the Housing Ombudsman, ensuring, again, a more coordinated approach across different public services. One key aspect of the code is its flexibility, particularly for smaller councils like ourselves, and it allows us to tailor our complaints handling resources to our specific needs rather than imposing rigid structures on us. Additionally, the code refines the definition of a complaint, ensuring that not every expression of dissatisfaction automatically requires us to formally log it as a complaint, and allows us to resolve minor issues more efficiently through regular service delivery. Another significant change is the introduction of new timescales for handling complaints, which are slightly more generous than our current standards. We will need to adjust our processes accordingly, particularly around the timelines for acknowledging and responding to complaints. We're also required to conduct and publish an annual self-assessment against the LG SEO criteria, which will help us to continuously improve our practices and what we do. I'm very pleased to report that East Hants Council is already compliant with many aspects of the new code, thanks to the proactive work of our team in customer services and across the council. However, there are some areas where we'll need to learn lessons and to make some adjustments, such as adapting our policies on persistent and unreasonable contact and behaviour, refining our web information, and revising our complaint response templates. So in summary, while the new complaint handling code presents some challenges, it also offers us an opportunity to enhance our approach to complaints, ensuring that we continue to provide fair, effective and timely responses to our residents. And on page 37, there are 2 recommendations for the executive.
Great, thanks very much, Joe. And you're
Any
proposing?
I'll propose.
Great. Do I have a seconder? Miley, thank you very much. Yeah, any comments or questions for Chris?
Thanks. You mentioned about communications needing to improve. Does that include in terms of educating complainants about the Ombudsman? Because reading the cases in detail there, a lot of them were cases that the Ombudsman felt they couldn't really deal with. So is there any plans to increase knowledge of what the Ombudsman actually does for complainants?
I see it as a positive that the Ombudsman has said we're not at fault, more than that they technically can't deal with them. And our complaints policy on our website will explain to people very clearly the 3 stages: a stage 1 complaint, a stage 2 complaint, and if you're still not happy, to go to the Ombudsman. And I have seen some of the stage 2 complaint responses, and I think, if I'm correct, all of those responses will say on that letter, if you're still not happy, here's your next step. So I think it's made very well clear to people.
Thanks. Any other comments, questions? Yep, Carl.
The number of complaints that have been upheld seem quite low, but I was curious to know whether that's been benchmarked against other councils, and if it's not, is there a way that we can benchmark our complaints against other councils?
I don't think we've done that benchmarking, but as it says in the paper, we're all going to be required, all councils will be required to publish data. So would that data that all councils are required to publish, would it include the number of complaints, do you know?
I'm not sure, to be honest, but I mean that comparison wasn't within the scope of this paper, but there's no reason why it can't be in future, summaries and evaluations. Obviously, one of the things that came out of this paper was the annual review, which we'll be carrying out, and I don't see why that wouldn't be a good opportunity to benchmark ourselves against other councils.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? Any other comments? Yeah, Vicky.
So the policy for dealing with unreasonable customer behaviour is very specifically targeted toward frontline staff. But I know from some of the public meetings I go to, particularly with planning officers, this would be very applicable to be applied to how some members of the public deal with some of our staff who are sort of out in the field, especially when there's 60 to 80 members of the public who are all terribly angry about a planning decision, because with planning decisions, people do tend to get quite irate because it's around people's homes and it's around our properties. I wondered whether either this one could be extended to cover that sort of work, and also for councillors, because the councillor code of conduct just says we should be treated with respect, but doesn't really cover things like residents that email me 2 to 3 times a week with slightly different complaints, which is around the repetitive complaints, especially when those emails are 3 to 5 pages long. So it's that sort of thing. I think we should be taking this as a blueprint and perhaps extending it to other areas of the council and council officers if possible.
I think it's a very valid point, and especially with the new administration, with more community forums, have we addressed how they're conducted? Is there more thought we need about that? I don't know if it's necessarily a customer service responsibility there, but I think it's something we can take away and look and see if the comments you're making, where they fit in and if they can be incorporated, because it's very valid.
Thank you, Councillor Dumont.
Thanks very much. Oh, Alex?
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that that it said a lot of the complaints that went to the Ombudsman, quite a lot of them around planning, and they can't be upheld. And I hope, hopefully the new things that this administration has brought in, be interesting to see if those complaints go down, because we've now got new mechanisms for residents to have their say. But I also wonder if there is anything else that needs to be made clear on our website to residents about complaints they can make about planning that are legitimate, or routes that are legitimate. No, so those are 2 different ideas, but I think they're worth looking at.
Again, yeah, I think interesting. I think we wouldn't want to put people off making a complaint or be telling people they can't make a complaint, but I think it's again something we could look at the page and how we're communicating, because yeah, I mean, as you said, if you're getting lots of complaints, I think it's important to note these are the logged complaints as well. So these probably wouldn't include things that are coming to members individually. They wouldn't be logged in these figures, and I'm sure that technically what the definition of a complaint is where it comes through us for our customer service processes.
Thank you.
Mileage?
Do you want to come back, Vicky? Sorry.
If I can, one of the things we are doing is extending the information on our website around planning, around how you can interact, around the development management forums, the community forums, etc. But also to try and explain some of the complexities of planning, because some of the complaints that we get are more around people thinking that we have a quota for planning applications for East Herts, which is one I've dealt with today, which don't actually exist. So some of that is around knowledge and making it easy to get that knowledge. And we are working on the website around planning to try and extend the advice we have on there.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Miley?
Thank you, Leader. I have a question about section 1.5, complaints dealt with by the Ombudsman. And it says that some of the reports can be a bit misleading. For instance, the Ombudsman may receive 10 complaints from customers, but only take 1 of these forward for investigation on the basis the other 9 have not resulted in injustice. If this 1 complaint is then upheld, then our performance is marked as 100% of East Herts complaints. These are upheld, when actually it should be only 10%. This seems to be very strange. Is there anything that we can do about this and to correct it?
Well, I'm guessing, and hoping Alex can come in here as well, but I'm guessing this is largely out of our control.
I think, unfortunately, it's entirely out of our control. At the end of the day, the LGO will dictate how they measure the data, and that's really why I made sure to include that caveat in the paper. It can be somewhat misleading if the LGO receives 10 complaints and chooses to investigate all of them, then that would be accurate data in my eyes. However, obviously, 9 of them aren't investigated, then that does skew the figures somewhat. So, but unfortunately, to answer your question, no, we can't influence that.
Thank you for the answer. It is disappointing because I think it would be very nice if East Herts could be represented accurately. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other? Yes. Yeah, David.
The guidance on dealing with persistent people talks about potentially adding people to the cautionary persons database, which I must confess is a new one on me. Is that something that's available to councillors?
I'm unaware if how many, if anyone, is on that and who's it's available to, but hopefully Alex can help.
It should be available for councillors. So councillors should be protected just as council officers are by the refreshed unreasonable contact policy. So in my eyes, there's no reason why not. I'm sure I will be corrected if I'm wrong though, looking across the table.
I'd probably just need to have a word with Alex outside of this setting, just to understand what level of sensitivity there is around the information, because clearly if there is sensitive personal data on there, we might just need to take a view on that. But on the face of it, without knowing too much detail, it might be possible for members to see that, but I would like to know just a little bit more about it before making a concrete answer on that, if that's okay.
Just to come back on it, I think where there's been specific risk to individual councillors, the people on those lists, those individual councillors have been made specifically aware where that risk has been highlighted. Is that correct, James?
I'm not involved in the collation of the list, but I would imagine that would be the case. I think it would be pretty strange for the councillor involved not to be told about that.
David, do you want to come back?
If we could have an action on that for some clarification to be issued, that would be useful.
That would be great.
Thank you.
We'll sort that out. Thank you. Anything else? No. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So the recommendation for this item 7, is detailed on page 37 of the agenda pack. There are two recommendations. Can we have a show of hands to indicate whether we're in favour of the recommendation? Thank you very much. Anyone against? Any abstentions? No, that's passed. Thank you very much. Thanks, Alex. Right, we'll now return to item 5, which is the Financial Management 2024-25 Q1 forecast to year end, which is in the supplementary agenda, pages 2 to page 13. And I'll hand over to Councillor Carl Britton.
Thank you, Leader. So this report outlines the financial forecast for the year 24-25 at the conclusion of Q1. The headlines are an overspend of £1.1 million in the net revenue budget and a 50k underspend in the capital budget. The detail of the revenue account forecast is shown in Appendix A, with the key variances described in more detail in Appendix B. The values presented in these appendices are very disappointing. However, it should be noted that the new forecasts are prudent and efforts are being made to reduce the impact of a number of these additional costs. These are detailed in section 2.7 of the report. It should also be noted that some of the forecast overspends in this report are one-off items, and therefore the impact on the medium-term financial plan will be less than the 1.1 million per year. Appendix C details the council performance against the savings programme in the 24-25 budget. Whilst failures to achieve the desired savings in this report are disappointing, in the majority of cases the savings have been merely delayed and should eventually be realised. Appendix D outlines variances in the capital programme. It is notable that there are very few variances in this report. Many of these projects are ongoing, and at this stage the final spending outcome is unknown. The expectation at the moment is that capital spending will be within budget, but if projects appear to be under budget, it is prudent not to claim the underspend until completion of the project. In summary, it does appear the council is going to overspend significantly this year, largely due to circumstances unforeseen at the time of budgeting, and in certain cases for reasons outside the council's control. Attempts to mitigate some of these overspends are in progress, and it is hoped that the year-end outcome will improve on this forecast significantly. The one-off nature of some of these items mean the long-term financial position has not declined in the same way as this forecast, and the budgeted transfer to reserves of £652,000 in 24-25 provides a buffer against some of this forecast overspend this year. I propose this report and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Carl. Is there anyone who would second it, please? Oh, thank you, Alex. So questions, comments, any thoughts? Bob?
Thank you very much, Ben. I've got, at least to start with, one question. Relates to para 2.7 in the report. And it's the last bullet point. Seems to be a suggestion there that you have in mind disposing of Charrington's house, which would seem to be at odds with previous comments about regeneration of Bishop Stortford and how Charrington's house might be part of that.
Okay, so I think what this relates to, at the moment we pay rates on Charrington's house because it exists as a building. If it was demolished, that liability would go away. So I think this was talking about consideration about demolishing the building, so not disposing of it in the sense of selling it, but demolishing it, so that then there wouldn't be a rates liability. But obviously there'd be a cost of doing that. So it's obviously going to be better in the long run to wait for the whole development process to take place.
If I might just respond. Yes, I mean, I've understood that the view you've taken is that it's uneconomic to demolish Charrington's, hence confusion arising from this bullet point. I mean, if you've concluded that you can't afford to demolish it, and you've just said you're not going to dispose of it, what does this bullet point mean?
I think the bullet point is there to highlight the fact that it has been considered as an option, because if it wasn't there, people say, well, why don't you just knock it down? But it has been considered, looked at, and it's not economic. So it's just there to clarify that fact.
If I may, just to help, I think in that, just to help understand it, we're talking of disposal. There's 2 points that have been wrapped up in that one bullet point. One, disposal to the development partner for Old River Lane, and the point being disposal before the end of the year. The budget as at the moment has Charrington's on our books, attracting business rates for the whole of the year. But if we can dispose of it to as part of that redevelopment before the end of the year, then that business rates would fall away to us. And then, of course, the other one then that Councillor Britton's talking about is potentially demolishing it. Another way of essentially getting rid of our liability for the business rates. So it's kind of two points combined into one bullet point there. If that helps.
That helps. That does. Bob, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you letting me come back again. I'm afraid it's just getting more confused the further it goes, really. I mean, there's more than an implication in Jonathan's comments just now that this building might be disposed of within the 24-25 year. Well, that year finishes in May, so you've only got half a year left to do that. I think you just said that was not viable. So disposal isn't viable, and yet apparently it's being considered for 24-25, and demolition isn't viable. So I'm completely flummoxed at the moment as to what this bullet point means.
So demolition by the council is not viable. Disposal is going to happen as part of the ORL development, and that hopefully will happen sooner rather than later. Although I don't know what date we can expect at the moment. It was not budgeted to be part of our assets this year because it was expected it would have already happened, but it's obviously been delayed.
Okay. David.
still on that point, I'm afraid. Can we have some clarification on at what point will Charrington's House move from the ownership and responsibility for the rates from the council to the developer? Would it be signing the development agreement or at some subsequent point?
Yeah, so that'll be at the signing of the development agreement.
Yvonne?
And the implication is that the council had an obligation to demolish it, but if it's disposed of and the developer is going to demolish it, then does that take money off what we receive, what the council receives?
Would you be able to help with that one?
The development agreement with City Heart includes a section 123 report, which sets out the value of the estate that we are disposing of to them and sets out the level of the capital receipt and makes sure that we're not disposing of it at more of a discount than permitted under the best value general disposal regulations. So we will sell them Charrington's House intact. They will then need to make a planning application, and part of that application will be to demolish Charrington's House and to redevelop that area. They obviously can't demolish Charrington's House, so they have permission to demolish Charrington's House. So they will become fully liable for the rates at the moment we sign the development agreement, and then the Old River Lane package of land passes to them. So it will not affect the development value of the capital receipt, because that's already taken into account in the calculation of the capital receipt.
Right. Any other? Alex?
Can I just ask how much is the loan that we've got at the moment? How much are we borrowing for the capital programmes that have been agreed previously?
I don't know the exact figure. I think we talked about 36 million earlier. That's the current level of borrowing.
And we presumed there's an interest rate at the moment on that we're paying back.
Yes, it's basically funded from short-term finance. There'll be various packages of loans which will have different interest rates.
So a lot of the issues we've got here are to do with those capital loans. A large proportion of what we owe is to do with the capital loans that were taken out.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any other questions? Oh, David, coming back.
Different point. On page 13 of the supplementary paper, you're still forecasting 170,000 spend on United from Church Hall, Waterlane Hall. Are we still on course to spend that money?
There's probably going to be a delay on that, but I think perhaps again, an officer may be able to help answer that one. I think the lease is possibly being extended.
The 170,000 was for works to the URC Hall, because we anticipated that the lease with the URC Church Hall elders would have ended by now. As they're having a delay to the works on their building, which is to do with a dispute over ownership of a piece of land which they think is theirs and their neighbours think is theirs. So until that is resolved, they have asked for an extension to their licence to operate the URC Hall. So therefore, because they are having that on a full repairing basis, there will be a delay to that 170 being spent, because that assumed that the URC elders had ended their lease and it came back into council ownership, and that we would need to take some remedial works to bring it up to standard. But because the church elders are continuing in their licence, and I think that is now till March next year, then that expenditure will probably fall away during the course of this year, but it will be rolled forward into the next financial year.
Okay. Yvonne.
In the light of that, are we as freeholder demanding that some of those repairs are made because the building's condition is understood?
I'm afraid I can't answer the question of the detail of that, because I'm not aware of the detail of the lease. So I'd have to check the detail of the lease to check the repairing requirements which are contained within the lease. So I can't answer a question in that detail at this meeting, I'm afraid.
Graham, I saw you had your hand up. I was going to come back to you.
Thank you. 2.5. The outstanding debt as at Q1 was £2.9 million. And it goes on to say that the restructure of the strategic finance service, the transaction team is now fully staffed and work has commenced on improving the aged debt position. We've been talking about this for a number of years now, and we was assured that a couple of years ago that it was being taken in-house by the finance department and they would start work on it and start reducing debt. In 2021, outstanding debt was £2.31 million. It's now increased to £2.9 million. So the work to decrease or call in the debts has not been followed through, and there's a big increase there. And trying to understand where this big increase has come from and why it hasn't been tackled. Yeah, I mean, obviously the bad debt will increase continuously over time because that's just the nature of the thing. No, obviously it should be tackled, and yeah, I wasn't aware that this has been going back since 2021. Yeah, I've been assured that we are now tackling this bad debt. Sorry, can I come back? Yeah. This has been going on for a number of years now. We've had assurances from the finance department that it was being looked at and it would be dealt with in-house because it was left with various different individual departments to recover their debt. I know quite well offhand because I was in the sort of waste department, which had quite a substantial amount of debt. Now, it hasn't decreased, it's increased, and I used 2021 as a benchmark. I could have gone back 2020, whatever. I'm very concerned about these figures, and can somebody tell me what has actually been done to recover this money, and what is going to be done to recover this money, and in what period of time it's going to be recovered or written off? Would you like to add to that, Stephen?
Yes, Councillor. The restructure of finance only concluded during the course of the last financial year, and all the staff were in post by the 31st of March. We therefore spent time training them up on procedures, etc., and looking at these things. We have now commissioned the Credit Protection Association to undertake a purge of the old debt, to write to the old debtors and to see what recovery rates we can have. From past experience, that will yield something between 40 and 50%. We're now also concentrating on debt when it comes onto the books immediately in order to take credit control action on that. And I can assure you that my transaction team leader has been tackling debt. In fact, she has a bit of a reputation, in fact, for getting payment out of people. I mean, we have Millstream, which is our own in-house, which is a separate entity which the council entirely owns, and you've had an experience of the debt chasing that goes on. So we are now tackling that old debt, which we could only tackle once we had members of staff in place. So the restructure has taken time to do, but that's now in place. We have the Credit Protection Association going through the old debt. Where that is not recoverable, we will write that off to ensure that we have clarity on the books. There are a number of very large debts in there which are to do with sensitive debtors, and I can't discuss them unless we go into camera session under Paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A, so I won't discuss the particular debtors, but we are now hopeful, because a certain person has moved on, that we can now take recovery action and reach an amicable agreement on that to significantly reduce those debtor figures. So I am confident, Councillor McAndrew, that you will see significant decrease in aged debt as at the 31st of March next year.
Thank you. I would like to hear more about it and go into part 2 or whatever it is so the finance officer can explain in more detail as he expressed.
I think we'll leave that I think we'll leave that. I think if you want to come and have a chat, we could perhaps look into providing written answer to you or some more detail later.
I would rather hear it from a finance officer because this
I
has
think-
been going on a long time.
I think that's absolutely fine. I don't think this is the place. I don't want to go into part 2 now. So we'll move on.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Bob?
Yeah, thank you. Just before we possibly move on, I mean, I'd just like to say that the proposition that bad debt will always increase is just plain wrong. It needs to be managed, and one of the reasons I'm quite sure that Graham would like now to go into, as we might call it, part 2, is because it's all very well for it to be said that come some point in time the number will be down, but the question then is, why is it down? And if it's down because a massive chunk has been written off, that isn't necessarily very productive. You've got debt here that's over 12 months old that totals £1.8 million. It's a lot of money. So that's why I'm sure Graham is taking the opportunity of Steve Lannett's comments to say that it would be useful to know now what the background is.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Any other questions? No? Okay. So we've had a discussion. The recommendation for this item is detailed on page 2 of the supplementary agenda pack. Can we take any? Can we vote for this item? Those in favour? Thank you very much. Any against? And any abstentions? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 6, the advertising and sponsorship policy, which is pages 17 to 36, and it's back to Carl.
Thank you, Leader. With the gradual decline in government funding, the council needs to maximise its income from its assets through advertising and sponsorship. The opening of Beam provides a tremendous opportunity to earn additional income. It is necessary to create an advertising, sponsorship and donations policy so that officers have the framework that defines the kind of opportunities that are acceptable and ensure consistency across different areas of council operations. It is also important to protect the reputation of the council and to ensure the correct treatment of VAT to avoid financial penalties. The policy defines the specific prohibitions and exemptions based on the council's corporate objectives. The exemptions exist primarily to protect the council's own interests. Many councils already have such a policy, and this document is very similar in format and content to many others already being applied successfully elsewhere. The full policy is documented in the appendix. I propose this report and I'm happy to take questions and listen to comments.
Thanks very much, Carl. Do we have a seconder, please? Thanks, Chris. Comments, questions, thoughts? Chris.
Thanks. Point 5.1 on page 3, saying there's a risk that not all exemptions that should have been identified have been. But presumably, if something comes up where we need an exemption, we can revisit that. That's my point to my question.
Yes, I think that certainly there's going to be the opportunity for council to review the exemption on a 12-monthly basis. But I think if anything came up that was unanticipated, then yes, it would be reviewed.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, David.
Just a very small comment on page 4 of the policy, which is page 28 of the bundle, where it refers to tobacco, rolling papers and filters. I just wondered whether we should include vaping products in that section as well.
That's an interesting point. I don't know whether we want to kind of discuss that now further. It's not. It's obviously a lot of this is probably standard text that's in other policies, and perhaps they've not been completely up to date. And I suppose vaping is something that's come up in the last few years. So I think it's certainly an interesting point.
Yeah,
Thank
I mean,
you.
it's something, this is obviously a policy this is the first look. It's going to come to council, I understand. So there's an opportunity there to modify it en route. Any other comments, questions? Joe.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to focus particularly on, because it isn't explicitly stated in here, sports and leisure centres. At the moment, we currently allow SLM to allow advertisements from sports gambling companies on their digital advertising boards. I just wanted to ask whether this adopted code would explicitly cover this, and if so, when when it will be effective from, because I understand that the advertising arrangements that they have is done through an external company and through a separate contract.
I don't know whether, Stephen, would you be able to just confirm that?
I believe my understanding is that as part of the contract for leisure, we have leased the leisure centres to SLM, and therefore, because we've leased the building to them, we don't actually have any control over the advertising ad per se. But I'm not the expert on the sports and leisure contract, so.
Yep, so Stephen's correct. So we obviously have a commercial contract that generates us an income, and we give our leisure operator the flexibility to do what they need to generate that income for us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just find that particularly concerning, given we've got big East Herts logos next to, currently at the moment you walk into a leisure centre, sports, gambling companies.
I mean, presumably, those are the conditions of a lease are negotiated at the beginning, prior to the lease taking place, and when the lease should be up, there is an opportunity, presumably, to renegotiate that lease.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a specific issue, I'm happy to take it back with our provider and just ask the question. That's not a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you very much. So the recommendation for this item is detailed on page 17 of the agenda pack. Can we have a show of hands? All those in favour, please. Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's passed. Thank you. We've been through item 7, so we'll move to item 8, which is the East Herts Local Development Scheme, which is on pages 68 to 87 of the agenda pack. And I'll hand over to Vicky Glover-Ward.
Thank you, Leader. In October 2023, we undertook a review of our district plan, and we decided that it needed a full review. We originally planned, under the MPPF that was in place at the time, that we would be looking to start that review in this autumn in 2024. With the revised MPPF that's been put out, we're not expecting the secondary legislation that allows us to undertake the district plan review until spring, summer 2025. Consequently, we have updated the East Herts Local Development Scheme to show how we will update the district plan and the steps to update it. On page 68, we have 2 recommendations for the executive. One, to recommend to the council that the East Herts Local Development Scheme, as per Appendix A, is agreed to take effect from October 2024, and also, because we want to give the public more information on planning, that this local development scheme is also published on the council's website. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Vicky. And you're happy to propose that. Anyone who'd second that proposal? Thanks, Hermione. Any questions, comments, thoughts? No. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much, Vicky. Well, all it takes is just a vote. Anyone, well, can we have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, thank you. That's passed as well. Okay, moving to item 9, the Ward Freeman Pool update, which is on pages 88 to 93 of the agenda pack, and it's back to Carl.
Thank you, Leader. This paper outlines the options for members to consider regarding the future of Ward Freeman Pool. The recommended proposal in section 4.1 is that East Herts Council continues to work with and facilitate discussions between the Ward Freeman Community Pool Group and Herts County Council. Continues the joint agreement with Herts County Council and formally removes the management of the pool from the SLM contract. The building will be hoarded to optimise security, safety and safeguard it for future use. Based on information provided at this time, the net saving to East Herts Council in 2024 from making this decision will be a £46,000 saving for 2024. The Council will continue to bear joint responsibility with Herts County Council for the maintenance under the joint use agreement. In the meantime, the Ward Freeman Community Pool Group will continue to try to obtain grant funding to enable it to fund the repairs to the pool. To this end, the group have applied to several external funding bodies. This arrangement cannot continue indefinitely, so the proposal is to undertake a further review in March 2025 if no progress has been made on securing external funding. Happy to propose this report and take questions.
Thanks very much. Could I have a seconder, please? Oh, thanks, Alex. Thank you very much. Yeah, comments, questions, any thoughts? Alex.
It's probably a stupid question, but has the pool been drained? Is there any water in the pool?
I believe it has been drained. Is that correct? Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? No? Okay. Well, we've only got one recommendation, which is to approve option 1, as Carl has said. Can we have a show of hands to indicate if you're in favour of the recommendation? Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No. Thank you. That's been passed. Right, the last item is number 9, any urgent business. There's no urgent business, and so at 19:47 I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.